Hello Tattooed Athletic Club and welcome to another edition of Tattooed Athlete. I'm super excited today to be joined by Adrian Conway. What's up, Adrian? How's it going, man?
Good.
Yeah?
I'm excited to be on.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. We're here in your basement,
Yep.
which is awesome. We wanted to go home gym, but a little hot outside.
It's hot and echoey.
And echoey. This is even better. Well, thanks so much for sitting down with me. I appreciate it.
Of course.
So, before we get into your tattoos, because I want to hear about those for sure, would love to hear about your fitness journey, kind of how that got started when you were young, got you to being now a CrossFit Games athlete.
Yeah. Fitness for me has been like a lifelong thing, and I think it started by proxy of like just wanting to be a good athlete.
Sure.
Honestly, like I grew up in a, my dad was always going to the gym, and so I always was kind of in the gym, right? Like if they were working out on the weekend, we're from a small town initially, and so it's like we're going to this small kind of like global gym, and it was one of those deals where it was like, my dad and my stepmom would just have a key to the place. So it's like if you had a membership, you had a key, you go unlock it. So they'd let Dan and I like go in there and play around, right? So that was some of my first memories in fitness. But I really remember a specific time when my Uncle Terry, we were at like, I don't know, some kind of family barbecue, probably like what the 4th of July will be here, right? And he literally like, for some reason, I don't know how this became a topic, he was like, I bet you can't do 100 sit-ups. No idea why.
Yeah. How old were you at this?
I don't know, 5 or 6 at least, I think. Right, like 5 or 6. I believe I was in kindergarten. And I was like, oh yeah, huh? Yes, I can. And he was like, okay, I'll give you $5 if you do 100 sit-ups. So
that's all the money in the world.
I shoved my feet under the couch and I did 100 sit-ups.
Yeah.
And it was awful. I remember like my neck, like like your neck gets sore, like it's like tired, like your head. My head was probably ridiculously heavy for my body at the time. And but I got to 100, and so I got $5. And for me, immediately that was like, for some reason, I knew that was hard, but for some reason it was really cool to him that I did 100 or that I could do 100.
Sure.
And then I remember him telling and seeing him tell other people, Adrian just did 100 sit-ups. And I was like, oh, there's something cool about that for some reason, right? Like that was hard for me, but it was cool to him. And that was like a light bulb moment for me fitness-wise, or like even work ethic-wise, I should say.
Absolutely.
But that's as far back as it goes, man. Then honestly, moving forward, being obsessive with football and like hearing stories about Herschel Walker. 1,000 sit-ups a day, 1,000 push-ups a day. It's like I never really touched a weight, but I did that, and then that dude was built like a train, So I heard those kind of stories. I heard about Jerry Rice running hills and all these things, and of course I wanted to play football, and so I was doing push-ups and sit-ups on a nightly basis, even from the time I was a teenager. Which before the weight room and before really formally learning how to train my body, it gave me a ton of advantage because I walked in with like this baseline that other kids didn't have. And I was always just obsessive with trying to get the most out of myself. So through my years of football, eventually into college and playing college football, I was always the one kind of willing to spend more time in the weight room than my peers, willing to even investigate a little bit. I don't know if you remember, there was a guy named Adam Archuleta. Okay. He played for ASU. This is why he was so like familiar to me, is because I was living in Arizona at the time. Played for ASU. He was like strong safety, kind of like a linebacker guy, but wasn't fast enough, wasn't big enough. Had that stigma, like unathletic white guy type. And so he worked this guy named Jay Schroeder out of Arizona, and this guy like turned him into a freak. From the time he was like a junior in high school to the time he graduated ASU, he ended up going and playing in the NFL. He played with the Rams, won a Super Bowl with the Rams, and he was their strong safety starter, like killed it. But I read about the kind of training that he did that made him go from like this 4'8" guy to this low 4'5" guy, and then like what made his shuttle, And so with those curiosities, I was like putting these things into practice, and football came to an end for me, and that's when I found CrossFit. And it was like this natural marriage because I was drawn to hard work. I was obsessed with learning more how to create better potential from the human body and studying kinesiology in school. And then that's how I got into CrossFit, man.
Right. Which is, and it's so interesting when you talk about that first story of the 100 sit-ups. I'm like, that, unknown and unknowable for you at that time translates perfectly to even what you're doing now. As minor as that may have been at the time, still seems very similar to what you're doing.
Absolutely. So. Yeah. No, it is 100%.
Right. And so you played football at Weber State. You were a running back. And that has, I played college football as well, but that has an element of Olympic lifting, but not necessarily what translates into CrossFit. So how was that transition from you of getting started and then getting to the point where you're at now?
It was interesting. So I started Olympic lifting in high school. And lo and behold, before I even moved to Arizona permanently for high school, Dan and I were training. Our parents both worked a job at Juniata College, and at this college, the strength and conditioning coach there had a general interest in Dan and I. We were like some of the only local high school kids putting in work in the gym and then going to basketball practice, that kind of thing. Yeah. So he was really free about giving us information and like helping us out. He taught us how to hang clean. Okay. And he had all his football players at this Division III school. They were terrible at football, by the way. Yeah. Hang cleaning, learning how to hang snatch, really light weights, but like he had these things, right? And so like even as a sophomore in high school, like 9th grader, like we were exposed to like watching these big dudes like sling the barbell, and they were jumping with the weights, and I was like, what are they doing? Yeah. And so I had some exposure to it there. Fast forward to my senior year in high school in Arizona, my head coach Jeff Bowen at the time, it was a staple. Like we clean squatted and benched 3 days a week.
Gotcha. Okay.
In different cycles and different ways. Right. But for 6 months we did that. Yeah. So we got pretty strong. Like I had a power clean of like 300 pounds or more in high school. Wow. And so coming to Weber State, and then like exposure to some lifts. We would hang clean a little bit. We definitely weren't squat cleaning, right? Yeah. Guys just didn't move well enough. They were going to break their elbow or like, dislocate their shoulder.
And there's just not enough time, right, to be teaching those things the way they're supposed to.
Correct. So again, a lot of jumping with the barbell. The explosive power drive was the emphasis, but not a lot of technical focus. So then you get into CrossFit, and I'm like, okay, cool. Now they're asking us to squat clean specifically. Yeah. Squat snatch specifically, overhead squat, and it was like, I don't like that. Right. Like, let me just power snatch it, right? Yeah, let me just power clean it.
Yep, let me just get this overhead, right? Yeah, man. Or into the front rack, doesn't matter what it looks like.
That was it. So what I had to do at that point, though, was understand that, like, okay, I got to actually go back a little bit, right? So I went from knowing my numbers of a 315-pound power clean or something coming out of college to, like, okay, I'm going to go back and like kind of revamp and rework exactly what I'm doing, even if that gives me a hit now, like a step backwards. And so I would start to, put 135 pounds on the bar and figure out how to actually squat clean. Right. Put 95 pounds on the bar, figure out how to overhead squat it, figure out how to squat snatch it, work different positions, watch a ton of stuff. I watched a lot of YouTube, man. Yeah. Like initially, especially because I wasn't even training at a CrossFit gym. When I started competing at CrossFit, I still wasn't training at a CrossFit affiliate. And what year was this
when you started?
This is 2011. Okay. So it's like the first 3 months of my CrossFit experience was literally, I want to compete in this season, but I work at a performance enhancement gym. Right. We don't even have a traditional pull-up bar. It's like one of those that like goes this way and then out to the side.
Where your feet kind of touch the ground a little bit.
Feet are like a little close to the ground, and there's really no bar even in the middle. Yeah. It's just like free space. Because it's, it was like on a squat rig. Yeah. So I think I know how to do butterfly pull-ups because I'm like, but there's no bar there, right? Mind you. So if there was a bar, I'd be like smacking my chin on it. And clearly trying to explore Olympic lifts with no one watching me. Yeah. So it was so much time of watching YouTube and like watching guys like Chris Spieler or Rich Froning or people that were already in the sport and kind of had a name, and then I was like, I'm just going to copy what they do. Right. So that was the process, man. It's restart for me. Do a lot of lightweight, lots of reps, high quality. Even though phones weren't as good quite yet then, I was trying to film myself and be a student of my movement because it was such a big part of football for me. Yeah. And I was like, okay, it's got to have some carryover into this sport too. Right, exactly. And it certainly did.
Yeah, definitely. So then 2011 you started, and then now here we are, 2021. Yeah. You're getting ready for the CrossFit Games again. Yeah. But what was, kind of high level, what was that journey look like? Because I believe even at one point you were tied with Rich Froning for most affiliate cup wins or whatever it is, right? So what was that like?
Oh man, it was awesome, right? So initially I got into CrossFit, wanted to compete as an individual. 2011, outside looking in, didn't make it. 2012, Tommy Hackenbrook pulls me aside as I go down and start training with those guys at Ute a little bit because that was very close to where I was living and where the gym that I was coaching at was at the time. Right. And the guy, Damon Stewart at Wasatch CrossFit, who'd I trained with a bit, was like, you got to go train with these guys at Ute. Yeah. And Tommy literally just was like, hey man, after working out with them a few times, eating a large slice of humble pie, he was like, dude, you can be good. He's like, I bet you can make it to the games next year. He's like, but you're probably not ready to be like a top 10, top 5 guy, right? Yeah. And at the time, if you weren't top 10, top 5, there weren't even sponsorships for you. Right. So for me, he was kind of like, that could be a great route for you. It could build experience. It could be fun. He's like, or we could put a team together and go win the CrossFit Games. And so he was like, because then now a team that's winning the games, he's like, we can get some sponsorships, we'll get some momentum. And I was like, I'm down for it. Sure. So, our team came together 2012, trained our faces off, got really fit. Our motto as a team was always be the fittest individual. And then, of course, in the season, we were training and working to unify as a team. And 2012 and 2013, we kind of knocked it out of the park there. All 6 of us stayed together and did both years back-to-back and won. And then, like teams do, they break apart, and I had the vision to go individual.
Right.
2014, unfortunately, I tore my pec like 3 days before a regional. Right. Heartbreaking injury. I thought I was the fittest. I still, maybe looking back, was the fittest I'd ever been at that point. Come back 2015, finally punched my ticket, go individual. Great experience. Finished 21st in the world, which wasn't what I wanted to do, but looking back, like, I'm really grateful that it all played out. And I even got to go as an individual.
Yep.
Missed 2016 year by like 2 points.
And that was the first time that regional was down in Texas, right? So that was a little bit different too.
I think it was. It was the first year. No, 2015 was the first year.
Gotcha.
Yeah, different city though this time, right?
Yep.
But the first time I was in like Dallas, and I think we might have went to Austin or maybe a different venue in Dallas.
Yep.
Something switched.
Right.
But we're back down. We're back down there in Texas. I miss out by a couple points, and a couple of the girls that would go to be on our team in 2017 were also there, inching their way. Like it was like Michaela literally was seconds away from punching her ticket to the CrossFit Games. Mandy was there as an individual, and Tiffany was also there as an individual, and they finished like mid-teens. Right.
Okay.
All 3 of these women like extremely fit, ridiculous.
Right.
So I seized the opportunity with that chip on their shoulder, and I was like, what would really be good?
Yeah.
Is if we all went to the games next year and won the CrossFit Games. Right. Like, oh man, yeah. Mandy had been before as an individual. Tiff as an individual before. Michaela had never been.
Yeah.
Brennan had been on a team, and Mitch had never been either.
Yeah.
And so, we had a lot of experience within the group of us, but still a couple rookies.
Yeah. Yeah.
And man, it was an awesome experience. We came together with the Wasatch Brutes and crushed it and won. And then at that point, 2017. Long story short, we were kind of tied, right? Like our whole goal, like I see this from like a big picture looking down. I was like, Rich is going to be the first one to four affiliate cup titles or something like that. Or he was getting close to his 3rd. It was somewhere in there, and I was like, we can't let him win 3 in a row.
Right. Hashtag Stop the Mayhem.
He wins everything. And then hashtag Stop the Mayhem came up, which was hilarious. It kind of, Michael Kaziu was kind of the root of that. Our CEO was Brute at the time, and we rolled with it as a team. It was good. It gave us some accountability and like kind of put a target on our back a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, we went out there and executed the way we wanted to. They had some chinks in our armor that year, and we capitalized and won the games, man. It was a great experience.
Right,
yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And now you are just a couple weeks away from going back to Madison, feeling ready, feeling good to go for that.
Yeah, I feel good, man. I feel good. I feel ready. It's in a very different mind place than I've been in the past.
Sure.
I love to compete, but I didn't even know if I'd ever want to go back to the games again. So after I finished that year in 2017, we started FNX. We launched FNX that same August, right? So our booth was there. My partners are at the booth. I'm out on the field, kind of thing. And so with that, I was like, and we just had Elijah a few months before.
Yep.
In the meantime, we've had our second Ari, of course. And so like life is just at a very different place. I didn't know if I'd ever really be interested.
Right.
I knew I was coming up on the master's age thing, though.
Yeah.
So through quarantine last year, I started training a little bit more. I felt like my fitness feels like it's in a good spot. I was like, I'm going to see what happens through the Open this year. Open was only 3 weeks, which was awesome. Body felt good through it. No stress, right? And I was like, I finished much better than I thought.
Right.
And then we get into the qualifier, and it went really good.
Really good.
Like I was like, oh man, this is awesome. Like and then to have the opportunity to go back to the games and know there'll be 20 guys there in my age category. Like I'm really looking forward to it, and it's definitely in a different place mentally and space than I've ever been before. So I'm looking forward to it.
And it's a good field. It's a good 35 to 39 field, so that's going to be entertaining and good to watch.
Yeah, there's I forget, they dropped some statistics on the years of individual or open category games experience throughout that age, and then people that have been on the podium, and it's a really cool makeup of oh man, there's some experienced dudes really there that I've competed against in the past that I haven't competed against because they went after me or something. So it'll be awesome to be thrown down. Yep,
and it's exciting to have in-person competition back, so I know you got to be stoked for that.
Very.
And then last question before we get into chat twos.
Yeah. Carson
or Madison? Which one do you like better?
Man, that's a good question. So there's no beating the stadium in Carson.
Yep.
Right. The tennis stadium was electric. It's this. Yeah, you just can't you replace it, especially a nighttime event.
Yep.
Right. The night
under the lights, just like football.
It's just like football. On the other hand, Madison is that unique experience that you always hoped Carson could kind of become.
Sure.
But it's just too big of a city.
Right.
And so Madison, it's everything CrossFit Games, from the time you get off the plane to the restaurants around, the bars around, the hotels around, and you see people, you see fat heads of
The
CrossFit
signs,
Games
stuff,
athletes and
right.
everything, and it's like really unique in regards to like, okay, you feel like you're a part of something really big, which is special. And then I think that stadium is pretty awesome as well. Like I think I've gotten some memories from 2017, and even being there as like a spectator, having a booth over the last few years, we get to pop in and like watch some of the events that take place. Really electric. They still fill it up, you know, and then it's almost still got that dark vibe. So I think they do an awesome job there. And then of course the convenience of this is that lake is right there.
Right.
You don't have to leave. We don't really have to go. Dave doesn't have to bus us an hour and a half away to go to a pool or something like that.
Yep.
So it's good that way as well. So I don't know if I could pick between the two, but if I had to, I'd have to say Madison.
Yeah.
From a convenience standpoint more than anything. Right. As an athlete, I show up. I know what it's going to take me to get to the venue.
Exactly.
I know what time I need to leave.
Yep.
Callie was always like, man, I got to leave like an hour and a half early.
Right.
I don't know what traffic's going to be like today. I don't know what's going to happen. So that was a little bit stressful.
Right. And I would agree with you. The first time coming down the escalator and seeing like Welcome CrossFit Games in Madison, I was like, all right, this is kind of the cool spot to be.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, hey, I want to hear about your tattoos.
Okay.
I'd love to hear about your first one and
Yep.
maybe kind of the story behind getting that.
Yeah. So my first tattoo is just simply my initials, man. It's AJC on my right shoulder.
Yep.
It's simple. It's there in case I forget, of course. And I would honestly have to say like that tattoo has the least amount of meaning to me of any. And it played out just so that it was like I just wanted to get some ink, man.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get in the game, but I
Right.
didn't know what to do.
Yep.
I was like, man, I don't know if I want to get some like animal or like what do I want to do? What symbolizes me? Who am I at this point in my life? I was just about to go to college, so it was like fresh out of high school.
Yeah. So you were probably just 18.
Yeah, I was just 18, and everyone was in support of it. It wasn't, you know what I mean? Everyone in my family had already had tats.
Like underground
it was like,
stuff.
No, it was like, oh, cool, what you gonna get?
Right.
You know. But I just didn't really know, so it was like, all right, this is gonna be it. I'm just gonna get the initials, pick some font that like I think, you know, resonates with who I am, and that was it, AJC, and it settled on it. This right side of my body is pretty bare, other than that.
Other than that one, and you went to a tattoo shop for
this
this
one. That was a tattoo parlor for that one. I couldn't even tell you the guy's name. I don't remember.
Or you're in
Arizona. This is in Arizona.
Yep,
this is in Arizona.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. So where'd you go from there, right? Because that's small, easy to hide. But then got some more.
Got some more. So I think, you know, and it's sometimes hard for me to keep track exactly, but I think the next one was on my arm, the cross tattoo that I have on my arm here, and a cross is something that's always been important to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm very much an outwardly spoken, pretty spiritual individual.
Right.
Believe in Jesus, believe that He died for me. Absolutely. So the cross kind of symbolizes and reminds me of that. And honestly, like a lot of the ink that I go on to get on my body is just always, not always, but it kind of tends to like have like two meanings. One is that like I want to be able to remind myself of something,
right?
And then the other thing is that like I want to have a topic to discuss with someone.
Sure.
So as an athlete, for me, I've always noticed it. Like, hey, once I got my cross tattoo, people be like, "Oh, dude, I saw your cross. That was really cool in your football game or whatever," right? And then CrossFit comes and it's like, whoa, man, people definitely have a front page view of like your body.
Yep.
Guys are often taking off the shirts or wearing a cutoff, so it's a lot of stuff that people can see, and they learn a lot about you by seeing like this artwork and what it symbolizes.
Right.
So it was always been a great conversation starter for me. But the cross was something that was really important. I always knew I wanted to get one. It was one of the pieces that took the longest. It's kind of like a marbled looking cross.
Yep.
I know you probably can't see the ton on the camera, but it took a while. And at first it was just a bare cross.
Right.
And then I would go on to add some wings to it.
Okay, so those were two different things.
Two sessions, right? Like, I had this cross, and then I added the wings to it another time, like probably another off season or something, because I got several throughout my career. Weber State, like coming home,
right?
And then I threw in Romans 5:8.
Okay.
And the Romans 5:8 scripture up there on my shoulder, and it's a little bit. I think this was after technically I got baptized and became a Christian.
Okay.
But the cross was before that.
Right.
Right. The cross was when I was kind of like, hey, I love God and He's a cool dude,
yeah,
you know, but I don't know much about him.
Right.
He might not even know much about me, at least from an outwardly perspective, right? Like I wasn't really trying to be known to God.
Sure.
Like I was more of like a fan.
Got it.
You know what I mean?
Yep,
more of a fan, doing what I wanted to do all the time.
Right.
But not really kind of aligning with who I knew God was and His love for me and all that good stuff. And so Romans 5:8 is something that I threw above that cross. Man, I would say maybe at 22. I was 22 years old.
Okay.
Because I got baptized when I was 20. And Romans 5:8 is, it's that God loved us when we were at the lowest of our low.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So when we were still sinners, Christ died for us, is what it basically says in that verse. And for me, it's just a great reminder, of course, going right next to that cross, that like it's not like to symbolize the death of Jesus. It's like really what it meant. And for me, it's like looking back on my life, or even looking forward on my life, like all the times when I'm gonna like let God down, like He loved me most of those times, and it's like hard for me to remember. It's a great reminder as a parent. It's a great reminder for so many things. So that's that scripture on that side, and that was in addition to the cross. So.
Sure. And what was the significance of the wings onto the cross?
Yeah, the rings. The significance of the rings to me is like recognizing that Jesus didn't just die and suffer, but that He rose.
Got it.
Right. So it's kind of like the visualization for me. Again, it's just a depiction of like ascension, or him leaving the tomb. You know what I mean? Like that afterlife, because that's really what makes it special. It's like a lot of times we glorify His dying, and that's cool, but everybody dies.
Yeah.
Not a lot of people get back out of that grave, you know what I mean, and live. Absolutely. And then redeem us. So I think that's what that depicts to me.
Yeah. And were these the same artists, same shop in Arizona?
No, different. Yeah. So this tattoo really, and the rest of my tattoos on my body have pretty much been done by a guy named Manny down in Arizona.
Okay.
This one, the initial separate, of course, and the cross was separate. So I did go to the cross. I did do the cross to the same guy that did my initials. On the same shop.
Cool.
Because it was like that was a familiar place, right? It was safe.
You know what to expect there.
Yeah, and then after that, we've got a family friend. His name is Manny, and he's down there in Arizona, Phoenix area, who did a lot of our family's tattoos.
Cool.
And what that would turn into is like every summer when I'd go home, this guy would come to our house and tat us up.
Right.
Like it would be like me and like 6 other people sometimes. Yeah. So it's like an 18-hour experience. He's just hanging out. Like we're having a good time cooking some food, like whatever, and people are just rotating through his chair.
Right. Yeah. And is Manny still doing this? Is like he ever swing by and still do tattoos?
It's a good question. It's been years since I've seen Manny, but I would imagine he's still doing it. I would imagine he is. Yeah, that's how long it's been since I've gotten any ink. I couldn't even tell you.
Turned it into a family thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was great. Yeah.
Right. Yep. So where'd you go after that?
So I got that arm done, right, and then the next one was on the inside of my arm. Actually, sorry, I'm skipping ahead. So I got this scripture on my wrist. The scripture on my wrist is Philippians 4:13.
Yep.
Easy to cover up, right? But it's down here on my left side. You can kind of see it.
Yep.
And Philippians 4:13 is one of my all-time favorite scriptures. If you watch a lot of football, you notice like Tim Tebow and the other guys, like they get it on the eye black, and it's an amazing scripture to me. It's very encouraging. That's why it's on my wrist, because I can at any time look down, and see it there. But it was also easy to cover, right? It was low enough on my arm where it's kind of like that hybrid, right? Like I could cover this, cover nothing.
And at this point, you're probably still in your 20s. Like
I'm still like, man, I don't know what I'm going to be doing. Yeah. I'm hearing these stories of like, hey, you better not keep that.
Right.
So I get the Philippians 4:13, and Philippians 4:13 stands for I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. And for me, at the time, I would say it was like a football thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like, hey, I could do anything. Like, I can overcome anything. This 4th and short, easy day. Like, these challenges that are coming at me in college, like easy day, no problem.
Yeah.
And then as I matured, and of course I know it'll mean something different to me in 10 years from now when my kids are big and, like living their life.
Yeah.
But for me, now it really means like, any circumstance that happens, like God has given me enough for me to be enough.
Yeah.
Right. And so what I mean by that is like in the book of Philippians, especially in chapter 4, it's like if you ever want to nerd out on some really cool stuff, Paul writes this book, and Paul's a dude that's like been thrown in jail, right, for basically standing up for God, right, standing up for Jesus and being a Christian, and he's suffered a lot physically, like from a worldly perspective, man, like beaten down, all that stuff. And in this book, what he's teaching this church in Philippi is like no matter what he's gone through. He's had plenty, and he's had little.
Yeah.
And no matter what, he's learned the secret of being content and having contentment and finding contentment. And then it leads to, at the end of that, because through all things, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. And I was like, oh man, that's powerful. So it's almost like there's some more meaning in the scriptures that like lead up to this 4:13 for me. And I was like, what? There's more than just that one verse that like really spoke to me. So it's an amazing one to see, and of course, tattoo meanings. I'm sure you get it all the time, but they'll change and evolve.
Yeah, definitely. That's what's great about them. And so, other than your AJC, right, which was your first one, your first dabble in it, everything since has been very meaningful.
Yeah, for sure.
Is what it sounds like, and then will continue to be meaningful and continue to be talking pieces as well as you you know, raise Elijah and Ari and all that good stuff also.
Yep.
So,
yep.
And then I know you've got Truly Blessed as well.
Yes.
And you get asked about those quite a bit.
Quite a bit. You know, in a sport of fitness, like we're always with our hands over our head, right? So on my right arm it says Truly, on my left arm it says Blessed. And yeah, it was all one piece. Truly Blessed is the idea. And, you know, for me, again, very similar to Philippians 4:13, it was like, man, I've been through a lot of things, you know. I had a very unique childhood. My parents were divorced. I grew up with 2 families. I lost my dad when I was 16. And so, like, there are some things that I've experienced where at times I felt like shunned upon.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if there's a God, okay, like, he's not treating me great.
Yeah.
And then there have been other times where it's like, you know, I feel like, oh, man, I've gotten these opportunities. Like, it's awesome, right? But for me, these tattoos are a reminder, like, no matter what's happening, there's significant things in my life I can find to remember that I'm truly blessed.
Definitely.
And so that's a reminder. I always hope that it's an encouragement to people that see me do stuff, because hopefully it's a reminder for them, right? I don't want them to look at me and be like, oh, Adrian's truly blessed. I want them to read my tattoo and be like, oh, yeah, you know what? Yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
We're truly blessed.
Definitely.
No matter what, the ups and the downs. So that's definitely what that stands for. And yeah, I'd say that's probably the tattoo I get the most questions about.
Right.
Yeah.
Was that Manny also?
It was.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you know how many were done by Manny at the house?
I mean, if that's considered one piece, there's that one. There's the addition to the cross. There's another one, the wrist. I got the ring, which we'll get to, and I got one on the ribs that he did as well.
And so at what point through the ones that you've already talked about, did it become something that you started to think about, right? Like it got away from like the spur of the moment, right? And you wanted something more meaningful.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would say it started at the time, even just when I got my cross tattoo, really. Because I started to dive into, and it was really about just creating a more meaningful relationship with God, honestly, right? And then me knowing some of the lowest hanging fruit for me to have like cool spiritual conversations with people is through the ink on my body. Yeah. Like it was just became apparent. Like people with that tattoo alone, they'd be like, "Oh, cool, man. So you're a Christian?" Or like, you know, what's a cross mean to you? You know, I get to explain that to someone. Cool. Add a little scripture to it. Dive in a little bit deeper. Romans 5:8, right? And then like the wings or whatever. The truly blessed, the Philippians 4:13. And then it was just that I think it was like learning that, man, this is kind of a way that I get to share a bit of my testimony. Was through the art of my body. That kind of sparked that initial like, okay, let me make sure there's a why tied into a lot of this stuff.
Right, more than the animal or something that your reference might have been.
Yeah, totally. Because I mean, not that I don't want an animal on my body eventually or something like that, but it just has to mean something to me so that there's a story there. I think that's what makes any art cool. Right.
And I do firmly believe, regardless of what people say, every tattoo does have a story. Whether it's minor because you just liked Pokemon at the time, right? That still has an impact and was meaningful to you. So I do believe that every tattoo has a story.
Yep. Oh, sure. Completely. I completely agree with that. Yep, absolutely.
So what was next?
So we hit the truly blessed, right?
Yep.
I think my not alone was next down my side. So there's a couple things with this. You know, not alone is something that I mean, it ties into my life several ways, right? Like, so I moved around a lot as a kid. You know, my stepbrother Dan that I grew up is certainly like a best friend, of course, like the closest friend that I ever had growing up. So we're I mean, I can say best friend, but really he's my brother, like through and through. And, you know, it was something that kind of tied me to him naturally, like this not alone thing. Like, no matter what we're going through, never alone, right? Never alone. And then the same thing, like we experienced this, what I would consider pretty strong tragedy. I was 16, he was 15, with my dad passing very unexpectedly. And so, you know, and then me having to live in Arizona, him live in Pennsylvania, like we were kind of separate at that point.
Tough ages too.
Very tough ages, man. You're trying to figure out who you are in life, and then this happens, and then it's like, oh man, I didn't really want to go to Arizona to live, because I had this vision of like playing high school football in Pennsylvania with this class of athletes that was really talented. We already had these things going from like my freshman year. Life was just going to set up that way for me in my mind. I was going to get recruited by Penn State or Ohio State, or you know what I mean? That's how it's going to go down. And so with that, it was like a lot of struggle. And so when I was ready to get a tattoo on my side, a couple things. I guess there's three. Really, was the first one. Is like it was my connection to my family. Never alone. A direct connection to God as well. You know, I know that no matter what I go through, His presence is always with me. He's the only person or the only entity, right? The only thing that's always been with me. Like I've lived all across the states, like no matter what. And I really feel that way, that like God protected me through a lot of situations, even before I was pursuing Him, right? Like He was always there with me no matter what. So it symbolizes that. I wanted to get it in a place that I knew was going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
Right. Like, so the ribs and the hole down my side wasn't a challenge.
What I've heard.
Yeah. I was like landing in a chair, like looking up at the ceiling, like not really even in the chair. I was like up there in the ceiling somewhere. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just like sweating.
Right.
I just remember just like being there, just like, okay, yeah, this is taking a long time.
And it's weird, right? Especially when you can't see it and you're just like, I don't have any idea where they're at that point.
No.
You know what I'm saying? I don't know what letter they're working on.
Absolutely not. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's crazy, right? And then especially like they got low and I'm like, man, you're like digging into my hip. And I look down, he's like, not even in my hip.
Right.
Or like it feels like it's up in your armpit and you're like, bro, I don't want it up in my armpit.
Right. Yeah,
and you look and it's like, it's just like right there on your rib. It's just like this perception of the pain is not like very accurate.
Right.
So I got that down my side, and then in turn, of course, it like has this connection to my marriage as well. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like nothing I go through as a man is alone, because I've got my wife there with me, and I know that God designed her to be with me and like us together. So there's something really special about that too. So it's kind of got those three like really strong ties for me. And it's a great reminder, of course, on a daily basis that you're never alone.
And I do believe Not Alone was first, and then the couple other things got added to it, right?
Yes. And I couldn't even tell you what all do we got down there now. We still got Deuteronomy 31:8, which ties into same idea, right? Okay. Like never being alone. Yeah. God is always with you, never forsake you. And then what else do we get? Oh, our anniversary. Yeah, it's our anniversary. So that was why. And then scripturally, of course, like God never leaving my side, Ashley always being there, our marriage, and then Not Alone right down the middle.
Right. And so I'm gonna just go ahead and go out on a limb and say that was your least, or that was the most painful, but also almost the most important with everything that you've got.
Yeah, the most meaningful. Yeah. Right. Yeah, which is kind of why the location is also special.
Right.
Is because like it was like a trying thing.
Right.
But most meaningful.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then you've got one more. You kind of already mentioned it.
Yep. I got on my ring finger here for when I'm not wearing one of these little rubberized rings or wearing my wedding ring. It says "I love you," and it is from Ash. So she wrote it.
Yep.
So it's in her hand. You know, her script. She wrote it on a piece of paper, and then the tattoo artist just kind of copied it and etched it right onto.
And did you get that one here in Salt Lake?
No, that was in Arizona as well. It was like I was getting our wedding date and that scripture, Deuteronomy 31:8, and this done at the same time.
Oh, 3 at a time.
But those were small pieces. You know what I mean? Like the addition to the Not Alone, I didn't do anything with that. That was alone.
Right.
That was by itself.
Yeah.
But those 3 small pieces, I think I got linked all in one session.
Awesome. Yeah. I love it, man. And you're thinking about some other stuff.
Yeah, I'm ready.
What are your thoughts? What are you thinking? What do you want to get?
I really don't know, which is the dangerous part. Yeah. I just know I want some more tattoos.
Right.
So I'm like craving more ink, and I don't even know what has spurred along, but I'd love to get something down below my elbow. Now it'll need to be meaningful, of course. Right. It might need to tie into, my cross and the spiritual aspect, because everything on my left arm is certainly spiritually based.
Yeah. Is that where you want to stick? You're gonna leave?
I don't know. I'm not concluded yet. Ironically, I'm definitely interested in getting something about my children.
Yeah.
Some about my kids, Ari and Elijah, and which they share the same initials. So that's kind of cool to tie back to AJC as well. Right. Is Elijah James Conway and Ari
and all of a sudden that's way more meaning.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. Way more. And that really wasn't intentional.
Right.
It was just kind of like the flow of those names like resonated with Ashley and I. So I don't know what it'll be, but I might be able to find a tattoo artist that knows me or is hearing the story in depth enough to be like, oh, I got some ideas. Like we could link that together and put it under his elbow, and
right.
Because I'd be down for that.
But I do want to ask, right? So, kids, you're raising 2 little ones. You've got a strong faith-based marriage and family and relationships, and there are stigmas, right, still around those beliefs in the world of tattoos. And hey, you've got this ink on your body. There's no way you're going to get into heaven. Whatever, right? However you want to phrase that.
Yeah.
And what's your response to those kind of conversations?
I think that's, man, it's a really good topic. I don't think about it very much because I don't really care about what other people think.
Right.
So, what I would say is that if people would want to come at others with like scriptural reference and be like, this is where it says, you are not to get tattoos on your body.
Right.
It's a lot like people that want to cling to Old Testament teachings like before Christ came, like eating shellfish or eating things, or you know what I mean. Like, and in the New Testament, we know Paul teaches, and just everyone else teaches, like don't let other people judge you based off of like the days of the week or what you do on Sunday or what you do, what you put into your mouth, what you eat. Right, because those are all very personal choices. And now, from a scriptural standpoint, if God gave one of those apostles the revelations to say like there will be no tattoos on your body, then I'd be like, yeah, I probably shouldn't get tattoos.
Do that. Yeah.
But I don't see that anywhere. And so with that being said, for me, it's a very unique opportunity to almost take this teaching of our body being our temple and having the opportunity to design it how I want. And so I think if my tattoos reflect something of love and grace and hopefully like inspiration to people, I hope God would be like, that's really cool. You know what I mean? Like, I made Adrian uniquely Adrian, and that's how he decided to express himself.
Absolutely.
So I hope and pray that that's the case, and people that struggle with that, I don't really have much to say, you know, in their direction. That's their body too. So if they want it to be clean and pristine, like, that's awesome.
You're allowed to do that.
But, you know, my soul is not clean and pristine by worldly standards, right? Like, I've done a lot of wrong in my life, and so I want people to be able to see my body and recognize that, like, oh man, Adrian's probably battled through some demons, or Adrian has been really forgiven by God, you know? So hopefully that's what the tattoos do bring up.
Yeah, and I love how you said expression, right? And in so many of the conversations I've had, that is a very common theme of the stuff I'm putting is an expression of who I am and my my art and those kind of things. Whether I'm the one doing it or not, they are so meaningful to individuals because of how they're choosing to use their body. For sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what's cool.
Yeah, and then what I think is really cool also when you talk about raising kids, and even Elijah and Ari, right? Like being around me and you and Hoop, and tattoos are pretty noticeable for those kids, and they'll even come up and be like, oh, what's on your arm? So at what point, right, or do you think that Elijah and Ari are going to come to you and be like, hey, what's this actually about? Right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know when they will. Elijah's asked me about my cross already. Yeah. And he knows very much about what it means.
Right.
And it's because, I mean, we pray together, and he talks to me. We'll do some, like, kids' Bible lessons and stuff. And so one of the things that brings that up is, like, the holidays of Easter or Christmas or something like that. And I'm like, oh, yeah, this is when Jesus was born, or, like, Easter. I was like, dude, like, this is actually the day that Jesus rose from the dead. And he was like, the dead? Yeah, but he died. He died on a cross. Like, this cross of dead has on his arm. Oh, you know what I mean? So it's like, and he'll be like, oh, that's a cross like yours, Dad, or like, that's a cross like so-and-so. He's like, when Jesus died. And I'll be like, yep, that's it. And so, those conversations happen a lot earlier than you think, because it's not like I expected to be having that conversation with a 3 or 4-year-old.
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure when you got your cross tattoo, you're not thinking, oh, someday my son's going to ask me what this means, and I'm going to use it as a lesson.
Right. Yeah, no, and it is. It's very great. And I'm excited for, when they want to have conversations about having tattoos of their own.
Right.
Because my advice will be like, hey, make sure it's really special to you.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you can get them removed, but it'll never look the same, right? But you want it to be important to you, and I'll encourage them to wait, of course, till they're adults.
Definitely.
Just so that they're sure of those choices.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I think I made a lot of choices prior to, like, even 25, where I'd be like, yeah, I should just wait until I was 25.
Yeah, right.
From a male perspective specifically.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm excited about that and having those conversations.
Right. So do you have any other advice for anyone who might be looking into getting their first tattoo?
Oh yeah, for sure. My advice is like, don't look for the cheap tattoo.
Yeah.
Because early, especially your first one, you're like, oh, that's so expensive though. I'm like, man.
How about $50?
Yeah, and it's like, go to people that are sought after. Be willing to, I mean, in my opinion, right, be willing to be on a little bit of a wait list. Think it through, because this is art. This is an expression of something that you want to be poured out, and it's like, don't do the quick fix thing. So do that and do your due diligence always, like, asking around, can I see some work? Can I see, what have you done in the past? You know what I mean? Like, ask those kind of questions, because I think that's what's important. More so, of course, with the quality of your tattoo, and then, of course, when it's time, when you sit down in the chair and you know what you want, I think you feel passionate about it. It doesn't have to be a life-changing picture.
Sure.
Right? Because it's still going to reflect a time in your life.
Yeah.
So it's like, even if you really don't know why you're getting something, like, you'll remember where you were in that time of your life.
Definitely.
And you'll be putting it back. Like you said, the story, like, it's true.
Right.
Even if you're wasted and you get a tattoo, you're like, well, that night I don't even remember what happened that night. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, people, there's still some semblance and, like, meaning, whether it's a funny story or whether it's one that doesn't have much memory at all.
Yeah.
So I would say try to make it as special as you can.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I even look back on some of my original ones that I got, and same thing. Like, I wanted the cheapest thing at the time, and no, it's not perfect, but I still do look at it and remember where I was in the time and why I wanted it, and that meaning hasn't changed for me.
Right.
So, and it sounds like your stories are very similar.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah.
So, well, I appreciate you sharing all this, man. But what's next for you in your kind of fitness journey, after Madison?
I don't know. That's a good question. I have no idea. I wish I was thinking that far ahead.
Yeah.
I'll get through the games this year and have a great time. Hopefully come out healthy. Enjoy getting out on the floor again. And then see where that leaves me. If that leaves me wanting to go back and compete again, maybe I'll spend a little bit more time training and be ready again, or I don't know, I'd still entertain potentially being on a team.
Okay.
Especially if I make it through the season healthy and I feel good. It shows me again that like, oh yeah, I can train kind of how I used to with a little less and like feel good.
Right.
Because at this point in my life, it's just the juice isn't worth the squeeze to be beat up and like not be able to play with my kids and like have my shoulder mangled and like, it's just not worth it. Whereas before I thought it was. But really, one thing I'm encouraged about doing is what I'd like to do is start having like some people that locally want to really compete.
Sure.
Is like really having an opportunity to get people together and coach them.
Yeah.
So like I really want to get back to, if time allows me, twice a week, like getting people from the Salt Lake area together at Living Victory CrossFit and like having a 90-minute class where it's like, hey, we're working skills. You don't know the workout. I'm about to write it up on the board. Today, this is the idea, this is the intention. Like, and make it almost like this team experience. Even if they're individuals, even if they all go back to their separate affiliates for the other days to train, I'd love to create some kind of like centralized idea because my passion is coaching, right?
Okay.
Like through and through.
More than competing.
100%.
Okay.
100%. And now I like to lead my athletes still, right? Some of the most powerful lessons I think that I can instill to someone is by leading them through my work ethic.
Right.
But there's a point where like my leadership, I think, and my presence can really help increase intensity, increase someone's focus, motivate them, and like that's what I'm charged up about.
Right.
Most, right? I know that's what I'll be doing over the next several years versus even if I compete, it'll probably be for the next few. So I want to see people make it to the CrossFit Games, man. I want to. So
get to be on that side of it.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely.
Right. Cool, man. Well, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you got a busy plate. You got FNX, you got kids, you got all kinds of stuff going on. So I appreciate you taking the time.
Absolutely,
we'll be following you on your journey of CrossFit and tattoos whenever that comes about. So thanks for taking the time, man.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.